continuation of the Committee of the Whole as we address the six-year capital program, capital budget, and operating budget for this year. The bills as are being considered today are as follows. Bill number 190152, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2020 through 2025 inclusive, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2020 capital budget, an ordinance, bill number 190154, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2020, and resolution number 190164, resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised five-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2020 through 2024 and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2019, which is to be submitted to by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement authorized by an ordinance of this council approved by the mayor on January 3rd, 1992, Bill 1563-A, by and between the city and the authority. So, and today we will hear from the following departments: the sheriff, the city commissioners, and there will be some callbacks of a couple of departments. So we will start with the sheriff. Sheriff Williams, please.
Good morning. Members of City Council, I'm Sheriff Jewel Williams of the City and County of Philadelphia. The city and the sheriff are proposing for FY2020 a budget of $27 million, essentially the same as our current budget. This is a prudent investment to make. We provide the city more than 2 times the cost of operating our department. In the current fiscal year, we are on track to provide over $60 million in delinquent fees. In fiscal 2018, we delivered to the city more than $20 million in cheats money from our dormant accounts. Our 5 court-ordered monthly sheriff sales are not solely to produce city revenue, but they return delinquent property and particularly lower cost properties to productive use. Last year, 20,409 Philadelphia properties were bought to sell, 7,263 were sold. The time in which the purchaser of a foreclosed property received a deed has been reduced from 120 days to 21 days as of today. A study showed over 70% of the properties sold at the foreclosure sale are tax compliant 2 years later. It is in everyone's interest to increase the number of people bidding for foreclosed properties. First, this keeps the process from being providence from a few people. Secondly, increasing the numbers of biddings increases the prices paid and the revenue to the city. Third, the higher the prices, the better the opportunity to give excess sales revenue to those who lost their properties to foreclosures. In 2018, we distributed $3.7 million in excess fees to 132 people who lost their properties. Since taking office in 2012, we have paid out over $19.5 million in excess proceeds to the people who lost their property. To increase participation in our sales, we hold 36 free How to Buy seminars, both in English and Spanish. Last year, we held our first Asian languages seminar, employing 5 interpreters. Over 300 citizens attended. We advertise each property with maps, data, photos on our website. We had 180,000 unique visitors to our website last year. Our primary job is to protect the Philadelphia courts. We now guard 9 court facilities, and we have increased patrols in the City Hall areas. Over 71,900 prisoners was transported between the jails and the courts. Another 1,196 trips were made transporting prisoners to Philadelphia and across the county. Our warrant unit over 4,300 felons, and we've served over 8,500 warrants. In 7 years, we have not had anyone escape from our custody. Due to the high number of vacancies in our deputy sheriff's officers' rank, our biggest challenge is managing our Class 100 funds. Of 294 budgeted positions, we have had at least as many as 50 vacancies. Because we have no discretion on what the courts to secure prisoners from transport, we must rely on overtime until the vacancies are filled. Additionally, each year we ask to guard more than one court. We are asked to guard more courts and take on new duties such as securing traffic court, taking warrant unit out from the courts. While the use of overtime results in saving the salary of level 100 allocations, it is expensive to wear out our deputies' base. The city personnel office, the Office of Human Workforce, controls the civil service list from which we can hire new deputies. We have not had a deputy sheriff officer test since 2009. For years, we have relied on the civil service lists from other departments, which has not been satisfactory. This year, the city personnel and the sheriff secured a list for the deputy sheriff's officers. We now have a list of almost 1,500 deputy sheriff candidates, and we will begin to fill vacancies in overtime. Thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sheriff Williams. Just let me touch on that last thing you talked about with the overtime, because I can see if you have your officers working that kind of overtime, it's got to be stressful to them. And you say since 2009 until just now, there hasn't been a deputy sheriff officer list?
No, it hasn't.
What was the reason? I'm trying to understand what the reason for that is.
What we heard in the past was it was too expensive to have a test. And filling in 50, 25 slots at a time, I think the city's position at that time was that it wasn't cost effective.
Mm-hmm. Do you have roughly like approximate how much the average sheriff deputy sheriff had to work overtime?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Do you have an approximate number of how many hours the deputy sheriff had to work overtime? You say how the stress that was put on the officers because of the overtime. Do you know on average how much they had to work overtime?
Well, we can get that from our finance person.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I can say this to you. We are members of the FOP, which is the Collecting Bargain Agreement, which means that a deputy sheriff officer cannot serve a document or posting or civil documents. It has to be a deputy sheriff, which means that is a sergeant and above. So the persons we have to get to do the overtime mainly would be a supervisor or someone who has supervisory rank. To the other part of the question, our finance person could answer that.
Morning, Mr. Allier. Just identify yourself and proceed, please.
Ben Haler, Chief Deputy for Finance. It can be for some deputies as many as 20 hours a week in overtime.
Really?
The way it works is that some deputies do not want overtime, and therefore they receive very little of it. And there's a system with the FOP contract where you rotate whether you want an overtime opportunity when it shows up. Some take a lot, some take very little, depending on their circumstances. But it can be onerous.
Okay, all right. I appreciate the answer. And Sheriff Williams, as I've said in other budget hearings, that I know I do, and a lot of people appreciate the work you've done on serving the domestic violence warrants and the attention you've paid to that, because that was not really done before, so I appreciate that.
I want to thank you. No place but in the city of Philadelphia, if a protection from abuse order is not served by the police and is served by the sheriff.
Right.
If people come to the Criminal Justice Center, most times the police will drop them off there. Our sheriff warrant officers will take that person or that family back to the house, take the weapons out of that house, and put that family back in there. And we've been doing that since we've been in office.
Right.
And we appreciate you recognizing what we do. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Councilman Tauberberger, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and Sheriff Williams, thank you and your department for their service.
Quite well.
As a city councilman in Philadelphia representing the entire city as a councilman at large, we get numerous requests from time to time for constituents. Your department has always been very helpful all around. Even if the answer is it can't be done, it is good to know that. But I'd have to say 90% of the time, it can be done, and your office has been very, very, very helpful to the constituency of Philadelphia, and that's one of the things that we strive to help. We are also not only a legislator, we're also an ombudsman many times for people and trying to resolve their problems. And your department has been very, very helpful, and for that I thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to thank you publicly and on the record with the added security in these chambers. Democracy only works when everybody can speak their mind. And we have a public comment session, and people can come up, and certainly if they want, they can hold up signs. That's great. But the fact that your officers are here keeps the ideas flowing and a sense of order, which is needed. Democracy is great to speak out, but if we have no order and it's total chaos, that's not good either. And I have been in these chambers, particularly as a staffer years ago, when there was no order and the chambers were taken over by demonstrators, and they may have thought it was a great victory, but in the end, it shut down democracy for that time. And having parents that came from immigrants from Nazi Germany in the 1930s, they relished this country because of its democracy, that people can speak out in a meaningful and peaceful manner. And I thank you for helping keep the peace in our very chambers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you, and I'm glad that Councilman pointed that out. He's absolutely right. I think your folks do a great job in here, so thank you.
Quite welcome. Thank
Councilman Dom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and good morning, Sheriff.
Good morning.
And thank you also for the excellent work your department does. I have about 4 or 5 questions I'd like to ask you. The number of prisoners you transport locally has declined over the last few years, from 125,000 a year to 71,900 per year. It's about a 40% drop in transportation. Has this saved the department dollars in the local prisoner transportation? And is there coordination between you and your department and the prison department's new transportation unit in the savings of dollars?
Well, there's several answers to that. One of the reasons is because of the manpower and the women power that we have in the sheriff's offices. Our deputy started, who does the transportation, at 5 o'clock in the morning. And if they're at the Northeast parking lot and they go to the prison at 6 o'clock and try to get the prisoners out. If there's a lockdown, if there's any incident that's going on in the prisons, that's where we start our delay. And driving south on 95 is another issue, which starts another delay. And by the time our deputies get here in the building between 7:30 and maybe 8 o'clock in the morning with the prisoners, the 500 or more prisoners that they bring down, and then we have to use the same deputies in the courtroom who does the transportation. And if there's a jury trial, we don't know if it lasts for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. So then it gives us another delay. Have we had the man and woman power we've asked for many years here, all the way back to the Michael Nutter administration, giving us the opportunity to hire adequate sheriff deputies to secure the courthouses, then our numbers would probably be less overtime and less employees. However, we cannot dictate how a judge, particularly in a jury trial, how long that court proceeding lasts.
No, but let me just ask this question in simple terms. If we reduced the transportation of 125,000 prisoners to 71,900 prisoners, you don't have to give me an answer today. What I would like you to do is to look at our budget and say, because of that dramatic reduction of 40% of the population, is there an opportunity for us to save some dollars on the fact that we're transporting almost 53,000 less people per year? You don't have to give me an answer right now, but
Okay.
I would like it to be looked at because it's a dramatic reduction, which is good, and there should be some offset savings there, I believe. I have a second question. In your testimony in fiscal year 19, your deputies conducted 1,196 trips across the country to transport prisoners to Philadelphia. The annual reports for 2018 and 2017, showed that your office transported 165 prisoners across the country each year. Why did the increase go up more than 700% in 1 year? Like we went from, in 17 and 18, about 165, and then this past year it's 1196. That might be good, but I'm just curious why that went up.
I think the answer is that somebody miscounted, and that person is probably me.
Okay, so which number is correct?
I believe this number is correct. We are sending, let me verify this number, but we are sending people out on virtually 2 or 3 times a month to all the garden spots of the country, 2 deputies to bring back a felon. So
for ballpark, would you say we're transporting 160 to 200 people into Philadelphia, or is the number 1196?
I got it. I think I have.
Mr. Harry, you speaking in the microphone a little better?
Let me verify the number that's there.
Okay, all right, that would be a help.
But I will tell you that, Councilman, whenever there's an extradition, if it's time sensitive, we have to move out and get that person or those persons very quickly. What happens is that if we sometimes get calls from places all over the country, sometimes outside of the country, if the time is running where they may say that if you don't come and get this prisoner, we're going to release them.
Oh, no, I'm not doubting that. I was looking at the numbers and saying we're averaging 165. All of a sudden, in 1 year, we have 1196.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how that increased so dramatically.
I think that's an error.
Okay.
He's the bean counter. We'll get with him.
Didn't count the beans right.
Your most annual recent report said that you made 896 arrests for non-payment of child support in 2018. I guess these are people who aren't paying their proper support. And do you have any idea what the outstanding amount in child support payments for this group was before they were arrested? Any ballpark?
No.
We don't actually have that, but I can tell you, we normally go and get the high-profile ones, some that owes up to $20,000, $30,000. We normally do our normal raids around Valentine's Day, and sometimes there's folks who owe over $20,000.
So I guess my question is really like, by arresting them, how much was actually paid in child support after we arrested them?
We can't tell you the number actually, but as we talk to the folks over in the courts, they can see an increase when other people know that the sheriff's out there doing, that we're out there making those raids. They come in and they can see an increase of monies that comes into the court system over there at 1501 Arch Street.
And Sheriff, the reason I'm asking these questions is because I'm just wondering, is there a better way, somewhere else in the country, there's a better way to do this than having to arrest people to make these payments? Is there another way of making sure they make the payments without incarceration?
Well, most times when we do those orders for child support, people normally come and they get released after they make their payment. But again, when the public knows that we're out looking for folks for child support, we get an influx of people who comes to 1501 Arch and pay child support.
I'm going to give an example of an alternative I just thought of while we're sitting here. I'm sure it's probably not legal, but I'll give you an example. The Revenue Department has another way of collecting delinquent taxes from landlords who don't pay us their real estate taxes. They send a notification to the tenant of the landlord who's delinquent to redirect their rents to the city of Philadelphia, and it's been very successful. The Commissioner and the Revenue Department is doing very well with that program. My question is, could you do some sort of sequestration, if that's what it would be called, to those people who aren't paying the support, like dramatically grab onto their payroll and not have to arrest them?
I would imagine we could. I'll talk to our legal folks.
We just followed the order of the court, which doesn't tell us how much money is owed. They just tell us to go get this
I'm just saying from a practical standpoint, if you would go after their payroll and not hurt them dramatically, but make sure they pay the proper amount and not have to arrest them and bring them into jail, then the money could, I'm just asking you to look at an alternative way to do this without incarceration.
Okay, that is something we would have to take up with the courts.
Okay. Is my time, okay? In the 2018 annual sheriff's report, it's noted that your office collected $54 million in delinquent taxes.
Yes.
It's good job, by the way, good job.
That's because of the new computer system that when I came in the office, we invested in the new system, and it's a system that probably is one of the best computer systems that the Revenue Department, the Water Department, and the gas company looks into the portals, and they can see their money and how we execute their money to the proper locations.
So it's noted in your report, 54 million collected, but the 2018 quarterly city manager's report notes an unaudited actual amount of 15.3. Just wondering why there's a difference in these two reports.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but the city does not count everything that we collect. We collect water fees, delinquent PGW fees. That's not accounted for in the city or the PICA reports. So there is always that disparity.
What does the city count, just real estate taxes?
Real estate taxes predominantly, predominantly.
And how does that money get transferred to the city?
Every week, that which we've collected is walked over to the Revenue Department.
Because it does not show up as non-local tax revenue in
No.
that quarterly city manager's report. So
No.
where does it actually show up on the city's books?
I don't know how they report it.
Can we find that out?
Sure.
Last question. The payroll obligations were $27.179 million in 2018. In 2019, payroll obligations were estimated to reach $24.632 million. Your original testimony stated your department was going to exceed $6 million in overtime. $3.4 million then was budgeted. Over the past 10 years, the department has overspent its budget by about 20% annually. Are we to believe that your budget for fiscal year 19 is not going to exceed the estimated amount of 24, or where will that fall?
It will exceed it, because we are having at various times 50 vacancies out of the workforce of deputies. On top of that, we are seeing a large number of deputies who are on leaves of various types and are therefore not available to us. So no, we'll exceed it this year.
Where do you think it's going to land?
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't where it was last year, somewhere around 6 million. We won't be able to hire from the new list until the end of the year, and that will be the first tranche of, say, 35 people. Then probably by the middle of next year, we will have a full complement, and that's when the vacancies, overtime has to come down.
Does that mean it's going to go to 30 million? Because if it's 24 budgeted and you're having 6 million in extra overtime, is that going to go to 30?
No, you're saving the salaries. If I understand your question correctly, you're saving on the salary money. It's a matter of, in level 100, you're saving in the salary levels, but you are increasing in the overtime. It doesn't quite balance out, but so the overtime will say $6 million, but you'll be under budget significantly in the salary line.
I understand that, so in the total cost, if in 2018 we were at 27 million as total costs, where will we end up in 2019?
About the same.
About 27. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the work you're doing, and I have no further questions. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you,
testifying.
Councilman Taubenberger.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And back to an earlier question on the PICA report. You had mentioned several departments that are not accounted for in the city, particularly the water department, and there may have been one or two others.
We collect in that collection that goes to the city every year, which will probably be close to 60 million this year. PGW, water, transfer taxes. These aren't counted for.
And in your opinion, why not? I mean, they're ultimately going back.
Their booking is different than ours. We're interested in showing the city how much we collect each week and each month.
And rightfully so, I get it.
Yeah. So, but revenue has, water and PGW has their own revenue departments. That's, revenue goes to them. The city does not count for it.
When you really look at it, I mean, I can see the case for PGW. It is a company, separate but owned by the city, whereas the water department is a department of the city of Philadelphia, as far as my understanding.
It is, but they have a separate collection agency, the Water Revenue Bureau, that accounts for that revenue.
So in your opinion, it's really just the methodology of the accounting work?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you for all the work you do.